everybody? Tyre Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully everyone is doing well, having a good week, and has had a good month of November. We're actually in December right now. Can you believe it? It's really been a whole 11 months, man. Wow. So year's gone by fast, but it's had plenty of crazy moments, plenty of memorable moments. And I'm glad that I've been able to share another year with you guys. We're heading towards the second year on the channel here. So, that being said, another thing that we have to deal with when it comes to December is the shift into winter. We're almost there. December 22nd is the official start of the winter solstice here. So we'll take a look at the final outlook here. This will be the final outlook video that I'll make right now regarding winter. I know there's still plenty of room for things to change here, but I think with the way the weather pattern is looking to turn, I could have a little bit of struggle trying to keep up with any further updates. So this will be the last one for now. If there's something really urgent enough, we'll kind of go into it from there. So as of right now, as far as the seasonal temperature outlook, not much has changed. Last update was on November 16th, and it's probably going to end up staying that way. Usually from this point, unless you go maybe somewhere mid-December, we might get one last outlook, but I don't think too much is really going to change here. What we're seeing is pretty typical of an El Nino type setup. We've discussed that a lot. There's a video that will be in the link to that will be in the top right corner, discussing what El Nino is and other oscillations, which is going to play a key part in the weather we are likely to see this winter. So, like I said, with El Nino, very typical to see the north usually above average in temperature. The equal chance, or maybe even the chance of below average temperatures existing across the southern U.S. in particular, especially towards the southeast. And then, of course, near normal and equal chances towards the south central and southwest central U.S. here. So we'll be keeping an eye on this region here. I think this is going to be a battle zone as well as far as precipitation is concerned, maybe on wintry precipitation. We've seen a couple storms even go through here already. And then also, of course, we're going to watch the southeast too. This often tends to be a battle zone regardless of whether we have El Nino or La Nina, sometimes even with neutral ends though. But I think this year may actually favor the southeast a little bit more towards wintry precipitation. So definitely something you want to keep an eye on there. So looking at that and then switching over to seasonal precipitation, not much has changed. Still pretty much the same as when we last looked at things, which is November 16th. But the above average moisture hasn't changed, of course. No surprise, another typical El Nino calling card, especially with a stronger El Nino. And then also, of course, towards the south here, we have two jet streams that we typically will worry about. The subtropical jets usually more active during the El Nino phase of the Enzo here versus La Nina, where usually the polar jet kind of dips a little further south. So in either situation, you can get cold blasts, but you can maybe see a little bit of a more southern orientation towards some of those colder shots. The south can sometimes be colder than the north even occasionally, but that's for another video or a discussion in general. Depends on how you guys want that to be relayed to you. But that being said, let's kind of take a look at a couple of different things here right now. And this is just going to be kind of a broad look at things. This is going to be a culmination of everything. So we're going to actually start out by looking at the oscillations right now. And the oscillation that we need to be paying attention to the most right now is the NAO. This is the North Atlantic Oscillation. This is over here towards Greenland. And we're in a phase where it's a little bit warmer over here. And usually with that will often result in more movement of cold air. So this is something for the southeast and eastern half of the U.S. to look out for. Because if we move towards January, you kind of see that warm air that was there during December kind of move off again. And then you start to see an increase in maybe even cooler air being prevalent here. Remember, we're only looking at this 1 month at a time. So this doesn't show what happens each day or each week even. So seeing what the height anomaly is based on climatology dating all the way back from 1984 up to 2009. Still a lot. Still some gaps here, but like I said, I think that in due time, especially towards the early part of January, especially if you saw the December outlook, I think there's going to be room for some cooler temperatures to start out the month and maybe even to finish it out. And then also peep this cold air that we're seeing over here just off the northwest here. I do think that's going to eventually come into play, especially as we get in towards February. You kind of see a little bit of an inkling of that, but of course, when we look as far out as we're looking out over 90 days. Kind of hard to really dial in on that right now, but we do eventually start to see that shift from a positive AO or NAO to a negative NAO, which means that we may start to see a warm up over the eastern half of the U.S. as we get into February. Could be interesting in regards to severe weather for that, but we'll get to that whenever we get to the February outlook. The other oscillation that we'll need to look at as well will be the AO, which is the Arctic oscillation. It's pretty much the same rule applying here. And usually we don't have the AO and NAO in opposite phases. Usually they're one and the same. So if we're in a positive phase with the AO or the NAO, the AO is usually right there along with it. And this is a big deal because mainly when we have the AO positive, it allows for more cold air to circulate around. There's little gaps where that cold air can kind of push further to the south here and come into play for the U.S. I kind of, like I said, I went into a little bit more detail with this in my December outlook, but I'm pretty much going to just draw the same diagram. You can see that for the most part, this is where most of the pressure is going to be contained here, but whenever it gets to a positive phase, we get these little ripples. And these little ripples are going to be what allow the cold air to come in. I didn't do a great job of drawing it, but it will be a little bit more like this. I'm not an artist, or at least not as far as arts and crafts. I don't know. I am a musician, okay? Give me a break. But anyway, one thing to make note of here is the fact that when we're in this positive phase, we usually will see a lot more movement, and then the same thing it kind of goes with the NAO, although there are times where these can be in opposite phases, but it never really stays that way for long. They usually end up coinciding with one another here. So here we are going into January. This is one of those times where you start to see that little bit of a shift, but usually once we see that shift begin to take place, usually it's not going to last. We go into February, we're still seeing an inkling of maybe a positive AO but a negative NAO. So may warm up across the south here, but there's still opportunities for maybe a couple of cold blasts here. And then in due time, it looks like we start to shift right back to a positive AO and then eventually a negative NAO to go with, or a positive NAO to go with it. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens ahead here. And we actually went ahead a little bit further than I intended to, but like I said, it's just kind of a tell of what could lie ahead here. Eventually, this will probably switch back to a negative AO and NAO. So that cold air will eventually retreat, but it could be a topsy-turvy kind of winter, you know. So definitely something that needs to be watched very closely. This could impact our severe weather, our winter weather, and much more. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and kind of get a brief idea as to what we could see in regards to potential temperatures and precipitation outlooks here. So here we are looking at the look for December here. If you saw the December outlook, no real surprises as to what we see here, and it could be pretty well above average for a lot of these areas here starting out with. But remember, this does not tell the whole story. This is over a 30-day period, and this is compared to, like I said, climatology between 1984 2009. This is not even including the last 14 years, so this isn't necessarily the greatest data pool that we've ever seen. So these numbers could be a little bit exaggerated, but still about 7 degrees Celsius could be about 20 to 30 degrees above average in temperature here. In the areas in the orangish color, we could see about maybe 10 degrees above average, maybe about 15 to 20 here, 20 and 25 getting into the deeper colors here as time goes on. And maybe even higher temperatures than that, maybe even 40 degrees above average in this bright shade of, in this little pinkish shade here. Watch what happens as we go into January. We start to see that shrink up a little bit. Again, I want to make note that this does not tell the whole story, so this could look entirely different. I think the weather pattern is going to be flip-flopping all throughout the next couple of months here through December and through January. And keep in mind, like I said, this is still far out, so there's a lot of room for this to change here. And then in February, it looks like we start to see a little bit more of a push of cold air here. I don't know if this will end up being the case, considering, like I said, looking almost 90 days out in advance. Not really much in the way of model data or ensembles really that look out this far. There's only a handful, so data is limited. Can't really get too heavy into just what this is looking like right now, but still, this is what winter could look like in general, though. I do think with the overall weather pattern in particular is what will interest a lot of us the most. Like I said, typical calling card for El Nino would be the temperature and the precip here, along with the temperature being active across the southeast. Cooler temperatures and increased rainfall here, also northwest being a thing, especially towards December. We see that potentially carrying on into January at times, but the west is starting to look a little bit more active here in this frame. But as we go towards February, here's typical looking El Nino here. Southeastern U.S. active. Really, just the southern U.S. in general just looks active from coast to coast here pretty much. Northern states are a little bit drier than average, but it does not mean that you're going to have a dry month. It just means that you may not see as much precipitation as what you're used to. But again, like I said, with the temperature outlook, take it with a grain of salt. Still can see plenty of changes here. Just one little change in the jet stream, jet stream could throw all of this into into limbo, into a ride, whichever one you want to call it at this point. With that being said here, that's pretty much going to be the final outlook for the year as far as winter is concerned. Make sure you're prepping for it. Firewood would be nice, especially if you're living towards the west, starting out this month of December here in particular. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the videos here. I'm going to sign off for now because I got to get ready for work. But it's been Tyler Metalhead Weatherman. Till next time, take care and have an awesome start to the month.